Hello Bandifans! In this video I'll show you how I made this custom, what I'm calling game accurate Dr. N.Gin figure using a broken Resaurus figure. I based my custom on his Crash Bandicoot 2 appearance. So let's get started. I found these two broken figures for very cheap online and I thought I could do something with them, so I went ahead and purchased them, and as you can see they're very damaged. N.Gin is missing his foot and his paintwork is awful, and Coco is missing an arm, her fringe, and her neck is super loose. Whee! The first step in the process was to clean them off in a bubble bath and to gently brush them with an old soft bristled toothbrush, which is hard to do with one hand, so the real cleaning happened off camera. I had toyed with the idea of cutting N.Gin's head off and repositioning it to make him look up, but after boiling his remaining leg in water, I was able to make him look up better, which was good enough, but he still needs another leg so he can stand up. I took a spiral needle vise and drilled into his stump, boring a little hole which would hold a piece of wire around which I would sculpt his new leg. To approximate the size of the other foot, I traced his foot onto some cardboard and then cut it out. This would act as a base for the foot, so I glued the foot to the wire to get the best position possible, then I put it to one side. As you can see, the figure has a metal jaw, but N.Gin didn't have a metal jaw in Crash 2, so I would need to change this and give him a flesh human jaw. So I gently sanded down the bolts on his chin. You may also notice that the entire right side of N.Gin's head is metal here, but in the game he had a flesh ear and a flesh cheek, so I'll have to make some more modifications. To begin, I sketched on where I thought the cheek should be, and I also decided to give him more flesh around his top lip, so I'll be removing that little piece of metal too. I started by sanding down the bolts, but realizing I'd want the cheek and the metal face to be separate, I ended up carving the cheek away with a scalpel instead. Unfortunately, I blocked the camera the whole time. You fool! After some light sanding, it turned out like this. I wasn't happy with still not being able to see his face fully, so I decided to give him a haircut. This was really easy because the plastic's quite soft. And here is his new haircut. A little chop resulted in a big difference. Then I carved away the metal part over his lip and sanded it down. Unfortunately, the clip of me sculpting his cheek, ear and covering up his jowls to make his new flesh chin attached to the rest of his face has been lost. Moron! But here are some photographs I took during the process. After that, I sculpted a basic foot shape and was ready to attach it. The figure has him with a very large collar, but I wanted to make the shoulder pads that he has in the video game. I didn't know how to do this, and firstly tried to sculpt it with milliput. Safe to say, it was a disaster and I removed it. But this was my first custom and I wasn't really sure what I was doing, so my next idea was to use a piece of thin white plastic and simply glue it onto him. I didn't achieve the desired effect, but with some milliput to help ease the transition, it was the best I could do at the time. If I were to do it again, I'd roll out some milliput, cut it, line it up with his back, and smooth it on. Once N.Gin's foot had dried, it was time to attach it. I drilled into his leg to adjust the height, applied some super glue and allowed him to dry while standing, taping his feet to stop him from slipping. Once the leg was glued in place, I used milliput to smooth the two pieces together. Now it's time to prime him for painting. I wanted to coat the entire figure, time to get an even coat, and so I devised the complex technique of shoving a rolling pin in his missile hole. But it worked! Seeing as he's mostly white, I used white spray paint as a base coat. This spray paint actually had a gloss finish, which wasn't ideal, but I got away with it. I did unfortunately drop the figure during this phase and the new leg snapped off. I glued it back in and sanded it down, but it never did look as perfect as the first time round. I started by painting the metal side of his face with a metallic silver paint and then his gloves and legs black. I wanted to mix up a really vibrant pink colour for his skin, just like in the game. Using a fine brush, I then applied the colour in very thin coats. I didn't want brush strokes to show through, so I did lots of very fine coats to achieve a smoother finish, but it took a long time. And for the first time I could see whether or not my cutting, sanding and sculpting had worked. Success! His cheek, ear, chin and jowls look really good. I then painted the eyelid and the eye bags in red. It was very precise work, so I kept moving him off camera. I do apologise for that. I then penciled in the pupils and decided to paint his hair first. I painted it in several layers, with the first one being a darker red, and I gradually layered up brighter orange colours. This brought out the depth of the sculpt and resulted in a really realistic finish. And here he is, with his face on! The pupils were drawn on with paint pens, as I could get them really precise and circular. I used a silver paint pen and a black paint pen to paint the shrapnel all over his body as well. The figure didn't come with a missile, so I'll be making it myself. Out of parts of a plastic bottle. Yeah, that thing there. I wish I had a missile for him because it would have been a lot easier to repaint that. But this one belongs to another N.Gin figure which is in great condition. It's not exactly the same in shape and size, but it fits the bill. It was a small travel shampoo bottle. I cut it down, then cut the twisty top off and glued it to the bottom flat end to create the exhaust for the rocket. I then cut pieces of the same white plastic used to make N.Gin's costume and glued them on for missile wings. Then I masked his gloves, applied yellow paint to create the iconic stripes, then unwrapped his gloves, and some of the paint had bled underneath. So I cleaned it up with a black permanent marker, which in the simplest solutions are the best, and N.Gin was completely finished. Now for his rocket. Once primed, the rocket started to look quite decent, and as luck would have it, it fit in his head perfectly. I could have just glued this part of the missile into N.Gin's head, but that would be no fun. On the original toy, it's a removable accessory. So I wedged some milliput into the hole on N.Gin's head to get the correct shape, then removed it and attached it to the end of the missile. Now my new missile can be removed and reinserted, just like on the original. After a kind of rushed paint job on the missile, I was done. In retrospect, I should have drawn the design on Photoshop, printed it and wrapped it around the missile like a sticker, but that's a task for another day. For now, I'm very pleased with how this figure came out. When I started this figure, I wasn't sure of my skills, and despite this being my first custom figure, I think it came out rather well. So what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Also, tell me, which look do you prefer? The more game-accurate look, or the original look? For me, the original figure will always reign supreme. I love Dr. N.Gin, so it's great to have another figure of him. Next up is Coco. I think I'll try and transform her into a Torna figure, so stay tuned for more. And thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and of course subscribe.
Hit subscribe! And don't forget to press the bell icon, you miserable bandicoots!